really calling out economic structure. If you were to tell somebody like, hey, you actually can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps, there's going to be a lack of economic mobility, you know, it's just, it bothers our psyche to a certain degree.
Almost 6:30.
Thank you. Yes. So with that, this will be the last question for each of you all. Do you foresee a time when Racecraft will no longer exist?
I think it's almost like asking, do you think we'll ever have a post-racial society? Which is like, don't ask that question.
We are in one. Obama's president.
I think there's, yeah, I think there's always going to be people who, you know, who have this need to be better, right? Or to believe that they're better anyways. And one of historically the easiest way to do that is to go, well, my skin is lighter than yours. I would love to say that, you know, it's gonna, that population's gonna shrink every year, right? Every day. I honestly don't know. And I think it doesn't really matter if you can eliminate something like racecraft or racism. I think I tend to be an optimist in how I view society or the progress of society, and I think the point is you just gotta keep trying. Like, sure, you can try and get rid of racecraft. I think that's all we really should concern ourselves with, not whether or not you get there, but the point is to try to get there. So.
Yeah, I guess I have a similar opinion. I'm a little bit more cynical. I don't think it's going to happen. Because we were built upon racism. It's just what funded us, what fuels us. And in order to effectively dismantle racism, we'd have to dismantle our entire structure, institutionally, politically, and economically. All the things are connected, so separately and their connection. And who wants to do that? Who wants to? That would just be like us recreating this country. Who wants to do that? That's exhausting. So I guess at this point, since that's not going to happen, even though that's a big deal in my mind, like reconstructing all of our legislation. That can't happen. So I guess if we work towards just writing better legislation that doesn't only benefit the elite, if people stop being willing to be bought by the elite to just promote these really racist legislations and just continue this system, continue this structure that just reifies racism in ways that are just insidious, they're just bad. Then yeah, I think we can slowly start to get there. We also have to just change the way that our minds work. We just have to change what history has told us. That like somehow the darker your skin color, the more inferior you are. Like that's still a thought. You may not like actively think it, but it's still very much a part of the way that people think. And that is seen through microaggressions. I'm like really on the microaggression train today. So I think ultimately I want to say yes. I'm gonna say no. I think the best that we can do is just strive for it, even though it's not gonna happen.
Unfortunately, I'm just as cynical as Kelsey. I always look at white supremacy as just being like, it's crazy, the way it's able to reproduce itself. Like I look at Dylan Roof, he is about my age. And so you can't say that racism is going to just die once. Yeah, it's not just going to die after this generation that's never been exposed to Jim Crow law dies off. I know that's very cynical, but it's realistic. And I always say this to people. White supremacy was something that came into being through hundreds of years of violence. So the fact that it would leave in a passive way is just lunacy. It's going to take real violence and real restructuring in order to upturn that system. But then again, I am cynical, and I do think we should always keep trying. But we also have to be very honest about what the system is, what it's done, who it's hurt, and how it's perpetuating itself. And if we can't start thinking about that in a new way, we're just setting ourselves up to really follow the same failures of the 1960s. So, I don't know. I don't think that there's going to be this post-racial utopia unless we really get real.
We just started a
Let's give
war.
our panelists a hand. So we're at 6:28. We're going to take some questions from the audience. How are we for time?
Keep it to maybe,
It's up to you.
if we keep it to 30 minutes, we should be good if you guys have a lot of questions.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I actually had two questions, either one hyper-local and one global. What do you want, the big global or the little local?
Start small, get big.
Okay,
I
so
would
the
say go
local
from
question
general to specific.
is, and I'm sort of personally interested in it, I'm sitting on a committee, for diversity and inclusion at BU, mostly about faculty, but, so what should our highest priorities for making a change around here be?
Hire some black faculty?
Yeah, that's the goal, yeah.
Well,
So are you saying you're trying to hire black faculty, or you're trying to figure out what you should do to be more inclusive?
Both.
Okay,
Because
so
we think the sort of operating theory of the diversity group, roughly speaking, is that the goal is to increase the number of minority faculty.
Okay.
And the elements are to look at how people do recruitment, how to retain people, and what the sort of community is like, and what's an inclusive environment. That's sort of the framework that we've been given to play with.
Okay. Well, I think for a lot of people, a huge problem with education is how much are you offering in salaries, benefits? Like, are you giving people something that they could live on? Is there an incentive for them to come to BU? I know that a huge problem now at the university level is that a lot of professors feel, what I think it's adjunct professors, right? You get $30,000 a year, maybe, no benefits.
you said a year that was per class.
For,
I think, isn't
for
adjunct per
30,000?
class?
No, that's for.
I'm not sure. The point is, you don't get paid something that you can really live on. For a lot of people of color, you take out huge loans to be in school, right? So you don't really want to spend what, you worked hard for this career, and now, let's say you're an educator, and you could make so much more at some other smaller school that could pay you way better than what BU might be offering. So I would say the first step is make sure you're giving people incentives to even come here. I would then say, let them know that there are students who want them to be here. I don't know if that would look like maybe working with, students of color on campus to create something, or I don't know, some sort of visual aid or something like that to let professors know that there are students here that want them here. I don't know, those are just two suggestions.
I would say first we have to get students of color in PhD programs. Let's start there. Why is it so surprising that I'm a doctoral candidate? It makes no sense to me. And then after that, yeah, I agree that the benefits matter a lot for any job. And also, the culture of this school. You hire this faculty of color, are they going to be supported? Are they going to feel welcomed here? Are they going to feel like they belong? Will there be some sort of, writing group or research group, some things that they don't feel like they're just alone in this sea of white professors, because they have each other, they look like they got each other. But if you're acknowledging that you have a dearth of faculty of color, then you have to like do something, like find a way to make them feel welcome and feel part of this community, whether it's through students or through, I don't know, through the community. The community might be a pretty cool thing. Yeah, you can't just hire them and then say you have all this money, go. It's not really gonna work. They have to actually feel a part of it, because white people feel like they belong anywhere. So how are you gonna make, that's a hard thing to do. How are you gonna make a person of color feel like they belong?
Well, you're a PhD candidate.
I am a PhD candidate.
So would you come work as a faculty member here?
Yes, so I guess I kind of have like an interest.
Does it mean I get a job?
Yeah. What are you saying? I'm gonna come to you in 6 years. Okay? I have my degree. Let me. Yeah, dude. You see that. So why is everyone so surprised?
I know, 6 years. I thought you were like towards the end, maybe.
Oh no, I'm the first year, bro. Like I'm in it for the long. Thank you for good luck to me and my sanity. So I said you had to make them feel welcome, but I mean I've only gone to white schools. I've never gone to a racially diverse school in my entire life. I did 1 year, but it was not a good year. I was 12. So I've always been the minority of minorities. My father has been the same. He's a professor, as I said. So looking for racial inclusion is not something that I do. It's not on the forefront because I don't expect it. I don't think it's ever going to happen because I don't really know what I would do. I just gave you suggestions. I'm just negating all of that. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would need because I've never had it before. So to answer your question, yes, this is now a binding thing. So I'm serious. I'm coming for you.
Though you may have to switch to engineering.
Okay, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, going to like a lily white institution does not faze me because I've only ever gone to those, right? Like I'm here now, only ever gone to predominantly white elite institutions. Interesting that I studied that, huh? So yeah, I mean, you can't just give them. So yeah, benefits are great. That's not all. They're gonna need some sort of support. All new faculty need some sort of support. The faculty of color are really gonna need something else, just because there just aren't enough of them. Anyway, grad programs in tenure is important, right? They can't just be like, oh, maybe I'll be here for like a year. Nah, You gotta give them like realistic hopes of getting tenure. Because you can't, not too many expectations for application, because that's overwhelming. I have so many feelings about this. So I'm gonna stop. Yeah, I gotta stop.
I guess another suggestion would be at least at BU have at least 2 people for each department. Like I went through the political science and international relations department through my undergrad career, and I never knew how white the departments were until I sat and I saw the professor sitting on stage at graduation, and I'm like, y'all couldn't find not one person, and it's like everyone's old too. So it's like y'all are going to be retiring soon. So
no, they're not. That's the problem. They're not retiring.
But talking to some of my political science professors and how they looked at black professors who were applying to those institutions, I'm like, well, I wouldn't even want somebody to work here because the retention rate would be low because they would leave after entering that antagonistic space. So I think by having at least 2 people that you hire at a time per department might be best, because I mean I couldn't imagine being the first black political science professor at this school. I would quit after a year, but those are just my feelings towards that department.
One of the things I want to add to that are these notions of who is qualified, because institutions will often say, well, we looked, but we couldn't find anyone that was qualified.
That's exactly
Don't focus on top 25. Don't focus on top 25.
That's the conversation I had with a professor in the political science department. She said that, well, our political science department, we get a lot of our scholars from Harvard, so the black professors that are graduating from Harvard, they just don't seem to want to come here. And I actually talked to a black scholar in my field who applied to BU, and she said that she was told, despite having a PhD in political science, that she was actually a sociologist. So it's like,
What?
exactly, it doesn't make sense in reality. So it's just getting people who are recruiting and attracting talent to also be people of color is important too, because no person of color is going to say these certain things, or people who are racially conscious if they're white.
Yeah, I mean, so switching professions or areas in the legal industry, I had a conversation with an individual who worked at a prominent top law firm, and there is a hiring rubric that these law firms use. They want people from the top law schools that were on law review, that graduated at the top of their law school class, and and these are very wealthy firms that produce work at a high rate and bill at exorbitant rates. But what they found, this individual partner at this firm said when he did an analysis of all of the first, second, and third year associates, he did a comparison of those who kind of squarely fit within that rubric, top tier law school, law review, top of their class, and compared them in terms of productivity, their billable hours and how much they were generating and how much work they were doing and the quality of their work. He compared that group to the group that fell outside of that rubric, and he found that the group that was not the prototype that they were looking for was the far more productive group. So there's something to be said about hiring rubrics. There's also something about creating cultures of inclusion or environments where people feel included, and it certainly goes for having professors and instructors of color, but also continuing to diversify the student body and being affirmative in the use of race in admissions process. And so when I was at the Lawyers Committee, we intervened on a lawsuit to defend Harvard against a challenge that was brought by a group of Asian students, but they were being used as a proxy for this conservative group that wanted to challenge race-based admission policies. But there is justification for including people of color in the admissions process and considering race in a way that doesn't violate the Constitution. So I think that's something else that this university really needs to contemplate and consider. We've got a couple more minutes. Other questions? Yes, Jim.
The issue of integrated movements. Historically, they exist. They existed during the populist era, and they were destroyed by the upper class, which didn't want an integrated movement, and that's when Jim Crow laws were instituted in the 1890s. But it's going on again in North Carolina, where it is a totally integrated movement. It's rich, it's poor, it's white, it's black, it's Hispanic, and they're fighting a North Carolina government which is taking away state education, which is destroying rural hospitals, and people in western North Carolina, white, poor whites, are joining the NAACP. There's a fusion movement going on every economic level and on every social level. And that has spread to some of the other southern states. But in addition to all of that, they use a religious background, which is shared. All the religions are involved, from the upper levels of it to the lay levels. Now, it is possible. It's not really possible in the north, because ghettos, northern ghettos, are more segregated today than southern areas, because of the way businesses and people have moved out into the suburbs and the exurbs, and they're mainly white. And so poor blacks and Hispanics are left in the inner cities, which are being destroyed because they don't have the tax bases. Schools are set up that way. And in the South, I have a feeling that things are changing. but it's politics on the local level, and it's not national politics, and it's gonna have to be done on a local level. It's not gonna be done up on the top on presidential or congressional, because all over the country you're fighting gerrymandering to get whites into the government, the federal government. Well, you have to have the movement on the local level, on the state level, in order to break through that.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing about kind of where we are now in the dynamics of race and the understanding of race. And there's this conversation around the Voting Rights Act. It's 50 years since the passage of the Voting Rights Act, and what are the conditions that we are in, and what is some of the legislation that has been enacted after the Shelby v. Holder decision. Very regressive moves to create voter ID laws, to purge voting rolls, to change district lines, to get rid of early voting, get rid of same-day election registration or election day registration, the very things that have been shown time and time again to increase voter participation and increase voter turnout. In North Carolina, it's like 70% of African Americans that voted voted either through early voting or same-day registration. So to Jim's point about being involved in local electoral politics is eminently important in this. Are there any other questions that we have?
I just want to make a quick comment. Whether folks here you read in the summertime about the lack of diversity and inclusion in Massachusetts schools, especially in the Boston area, and of all of the diverse nations in Boston University. I was here about 25 years ago, so I'm trying to keep up with this. Things are just, when you think like things are changing, the more you think things are changing, the more things stay the same. And so they reported only 4% of BU, Tufts, Harvard students are black. So I think the African Americans, you may have to start have questions for your university. The BU comes only 4%, and yet they say when you look at Boston now, we are the minority majority. So we have to find a mix and of improving things. And looking at your debate up here, in the usual workplaces, they don't want to talk about race issues. So when you open it up in discussions like this, and I see students here, it's something that you may be able to carry on once you get into your professions and start open minds to discuss historical and long-lasting race issues.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, did you have a question? Good, in the fellowship.
Yeah, I was just wondering about something that pulls together. First, and thank you for everything you've been saying. It's been a great discussion. The question that pulls together a few things. You were saying that in how can activists in this sort of self-selective social media stage, because I agree with you that it's absolutely necessary to interrogate terms of poverty within classes, but people who want to hear that interrogation will hear it from people who don't want. And so how can activists go around that sort of self-selective social media? Not even just social media, but television, so many channels, you can pick the one you want.
Well, why do you want to necessarily? Right, like, you're just, seems like just screaming on the wall.
Well, but do you hope that wall maybe could, I know you're sort of cynical, as you said yourself, but like, do you hope that wall could somehow?
Me, never. I guess, like, I feel like there's no real good answer to that. Yeah, I'm the person to talk to about this. I feel like you obviously want people who are gonna agree with you, who are gonna listen to you. You want those people to be your audience in terms of combating those who are just ignoring it or just not noticing that it's there. Is that what you mean?
It's so sticky because if people are selecting, then there has to be a certain level of awareness that it's going on. You're choosing.
Right. So how do you employ self-awareness?
Are you talking about the polarization of information now?
Oh, that's enough. Please talk about that.
Okay, well, that's what I thought you were talking about. More so is even amongst liberal spheres, or even if you want to talk about conservative spheres, there are like certain issues that you they're your pet issues and you focus on those and you don't really pay attention to what's going on. Is that more of what you're speaking to? Like, how does someone who is an environmentalist look at police brutality? How do they get access to that world?
Exactly,
Okay.
and that sort of the pluralization becomes part of it because, you know, people then, the same information will be doubled in the slant conservatives want to read it as, and then will be put into that stream of conservative news, while the other stream is totally blocked out.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's just like a problem that we have, probably because of the internet, and also the decline of mass media. Or the decline of media and newspapers are becoming more and more
Like
rare.
old media?
Yeah, old media forms are starting to die off. So, I mean, I would still try to get access to publications like The Nation, The New Yorker.
And that's self-selecting.
Yeah, so you're getting, you're being introduced to a wide variety of issues. I mean, I have problems with that because I'm like so much in my own world. When I talk to someone that I was talking to Jailyn about this earlier, from the cultural far left, I'm like, okay, I don't get the pronoun thing, can you explain this to me? They're like, okay, well, read this book, read this article. I'm like, how have I not been exposed to this if I also consider myself liberal? Am I as liberal as I think I am? So, it's the problem of mass media, really.
And so it seemed like your original question was like about confirmation bias. People who think a certain way will be more exposed to what you're talking about, whereas people who don't agree with you politically or ideologically necessarily won't even be within your spheres or think about or talk about things that you talk about or think about, right? And especially on social media. So when I was thinking about this event and like people coming to this event, that was actually something that kept going through my mind. When you have events like this or things on social media, when you're talking about any political issue, especially something like Black Lives Matter, you get the same kind of crowds often, and you get the same people who will like that status or retweet you or favorite it, right? Because they agree with that way of thinking. And yeah, that's definitely something I don't know how you get people at these conversations or to read a post or to view whatever it is that a video that you might have shared that talks about these issues because they just don't care about it. I'm not sure how you get people to change their minds in that way, especially on social media, because I know when I see people who just annoy me, I can without unfriending them, I can just hit unfollow, and I'll never see anything they say ever again. And I can't imagine how many people have done that to me. But we're still Facebook friends, so I have no way of knowing, right?
Yeah.
I think my answer is similar to my answer before about deconstructing racecrafting. You just have to keep trying. The pessimism comes out. You're going to fail a lot of the times.
We're a very apathetic generation.
And apathy is a huge issue. Tons of the people that I wanted to be at a conversation like this today didn't show up. That doesn't mean I won't keep inviting them. I think one of the privileges that we have at being at a privileges and largely a burden that we have at being a predominantly white university is that we can be those people to kind of be on the front lines talking to people who don't want to listen about these issues, and it sucks and it's a burden and we shouldn't have to do it, and sometimes I don't do it and sometimes I don't feel like doing it, because my primary goal here is to be a student, right? I'm supposed to be learning, I'm not supposed to be justifying or proving my humanity or proving the humanity of people that I identify with racially. But it's the reality is that I have to do that anyways.
Does that answer your question?
I kind of want to respond to you.
Okay.
Stick a little. I organized, but I'm gonna drop one.
Take it one as a privilege.
She's like, I got this.
I'm personally one of those people that I feel like once I bring you the information, it's up to you to do what you want with it, So I'm not gonna run around chasing you, trying to convince you that like I'm a human being and my life matters, or I'm not gonna run around trying to convince you that like Donald Trump is a racist asshole. Like I don't feel for my personal sanity and health, that's not good for me. Like there are people that I think can do that. I am not one of them. So I do feel like I have a responsibility to, you know, like my fellow human beings. Two, if I see that you, maybe you have learned or been taught incorrect knowledge, I have no problem addressing that and, you know, offering you another perspective. But for me, that's where my responsibility kind of ends, you know, like I gave you the information, it's up to you.
And I would add, like, you pick and choose your battles.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I'm not gonna talk about these things every time someone says, you know, someone makes a microaggression comment or someone says something that's overtly racist, or every time someone posts something about Trump. Like, I don't have the time of day to fight every fight. You pick and choose the ones that you want to fight. Good.
Well, just go back to the burden of having to educate the world around you about what really is true. I mean, what role could the university play more so in terms of supporting that, or actually maybe taking over some of the burden of that role?
I would love to see something like this be mandatory for professors, not necessarily with student panelists, but I would love to see something like these conversations, or all the, you know, conversations we have in the HTC, or when we have them in the Metcalf, when we go a little bit bigger. I don't see professors there. I see professors of color. The deans all stop by. They're sympathetic to the causes. Dean Elmore, Dean Battaglia, Miss Kennedy. But, like, again, it's the same crowd. It's the same professors. It's the same faculty. It's the same students. I would love to see my core professors at one of these conversations. I would love to see some of my journalism professors at one of these conversations. I don't see them, but, like, then they want to have an opinion on these issues. They want to write about it, but, like, what are your qualifications? Like, I don't see how you've been informed in a way on these issues that I haven't been. Yet they're allowed to teach and form the minds of students.
Yeah, I would say that institutionalizing race education is crucial for students. Like, because most schools, not Brown or Amherst, but most schools have a core curriculum. I don't know what your core curriculum is, because I didn't go here.
It's different.
But like your gen ed requirements, making a racial history course as being a part of one of those gen ed requirements, I think it's just massively important on the student body level. In terms of faculty, if I was a faculty member and let's be optimistic, let's say I got a job, and I get hired somewhere.
Wait,
Yeah.
I thought you had a job offer, right?
Well, you said I had to switch disciplines, that's just not gonna happen. And I go to a new space, and they, I think my preface is with, I think it's important, but I would feel like my agency was taken away as an adult if like my institution, my employer said, you have to attend this race education seminar. I'd be like, dude, first of all, my area of study, so let's start there. Also, I'm an adult. Like, I pay my own bill. I am an adult. So I think with faculty, like, it's important. It's very, very important. But it's hard because they are adults and they have their PhDs and they're just, or they're deans, you know, they have their jobs, they feel like they're fine. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, that's another thing. So I think it is on the student body level, I think it's easier. On the faculty and staff level, I think it's equally